Rassie Rasmus and the Springboks have just announced the squad to face Ireland in the biggest test series this year. Number 1 in the world versus number 2. As always, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Leave this video a like, and if you haven't, please absolutely mur that subscribe button because we're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, the team has literally dropped about 3 minutes ago, so this is going to be my live reaction, my live thoughts on who Rassie Rasmus has included into the squad to face Wales. Now, just browsing over it, there are a couple of people that have missed out that were included in the Wales squad, which is expected because the Bulls weren't available. A couple of overseas players weren't available. But there's a lot of questions around the squad that we're going to be answering in the next week or so. There's going to be many videos on the squad breakdown and what team I think should be taking on Ireland in the week to follow. So as I said, make sure you mur that subscribe button. So starting with the forwards. And a little bit of a surprise selection. I haven't seen many people include Phepsi Buthelezi in their squad to face Ireland, but I'm glad that he is there. Whether he's going to get a chance to play or not is still going to be seen, because you do have the likes of Ivan Ruiz and a couple of other guys that we're going to get into. But the first inclusion is Phepsi Buthelezi. Very happy for him, and potentially he comes off the bench in one of these tests. Next up, we got Ben Jason Dixon, who had a phenomenal season for the Stormers. He had a good game against Wales, and he's one of those utility forwards that can play 7, can play 8, can play 6. I'm pretty sure he can even play lock. So we know how much Rassie Rasmus loves the utility of players and using them in different aspects, coming off the bench, starting. So Ben Jason Dixon, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a start in the Ireland series. Next up, we got Pieter-Steph du Toit, who, I mean, one of the first guys you put on the team list. You just can't have a Springbok team or Springbok squad without Pieter-Steph du Toit at the moment. Another du Toit, Thomas du Toit, has had a great season overseas. I do think he's probably going to get a start in one of these Ireland tests, whether it's the first one or the second one, but he's had a phenomenal season over there in England. Next up, we've obviously got Eben Etzebeth. Now again, the captaincy talk's going to come up. Is it going to be Pieter-Steph? Is it going to be Eben Etzebeth, Handré Pollard, Bongi Mbonambe? We will get into that further in the week, but for now, Eben has obviously made the squad and he's probably going to start both tests. Next up, we got Johan Grobler from the Bulls, and I do think this is a very deserved call-up. He has made the squad. Whether he's going to start and make the team is still yet to be seen, but he's had a very good season for the Bulls, and as you'll see, there are a couple of Bulls inclusions. The one player that hasn't been included from the Bulls at the moment is Cameron Hanekom. That's because he is dealing with a little bit of an injury at the moment. So I think if he wasn't injured, he would have made the squad against Ireland. But he is one of the guys that have missed out in the squad. Next up, we've got Vincent Koch. Had a great season for the Sharks, had his 50th cap against Wales. He's always going to be included at the moment, one of the best props that we have in the country. Next up, we got Siya Kolisi. Now, there has been a lot of chatter around Siya Kolisi at the moment with the French news coming out, and not the French news, but the French coach that he works under at Racing 92 coming out and kind of diminishing and criticizing his performances after his injury. As we know, Siya Kolisi in a Springbok top is a different beast. It's going to be interesting to see if he captains, if he starts against Ireland, or if Rassie brings him up off the bench in that first test, just because he hasn't had that much game time in recent weeks. But as we saw, he did travel out to Twickenham to support the boys. Siya Kolisi is always a good player to have in the squad in terms of leadership. We then move over into Frans Malherbe, who will most definitely start against Ireland. He's just a diesel tractor that just he can just scrum against anyone. It's going to be interesting to see who Rassie includes in the starting pack, as well as then coming off the bench for the bomb squad. But as we know, Frans Malherbe was meant to start against Wales, but then said, no, it's Vincent's 50th cap. Let him rather have it. The next two players on the list are our two hookers, Malcolm Marx and Bongi Mbonambe. Good to see Malcolm Marx back in a Springbok jersey. He got about 45 minutes, and then Bongi got the rest. That is a lethal combination, having Malcolm Marx and Bongi Mbonambe in the same team. It doesn't matter which one you start. I would probably start Bongi and bring Malcolm Marx off the bench, just because I think he's a little bit more of an impact player than that of Bongi Mbonambe. We then move over into Salmon Murat. Now, he's had a very good season for the Stormers. He's also in there for his leadership capabilities, and a lot of people have sort of speculated and chatted about him potentially being the future captain of the Springboks, but he is going to have to put in some very, very good performances against the biggest teams in the world, your Irelands, your New Zealands, your Australias that are to come. Then we've got Franco Mostert, who again can slot in at lock, can slot in as a flank, can even play 8th man if need be. Again, Rassie likes that utility, and Franco Mostert will probably be in that lock position. There are a couple more locks on the list that Rassie has included in the forwards here for the squad to face Ireland, but I do think Franco Mostert will be up there for a starting position in that first test against Ireland. We then move over into Ox and Chen. I mean, this oak can scrum against anyone in the world. He got about 68 minutes against Wales, so that's kind of Rassie, for me, Rassie saying that Ox is definitely going to start against Ireland. Let's see how far he can push it in a test match. There is the argument that he is a very, very good impact player coming off of the bench. So Ox, a very, very good prop. Starting or coming off the bench, it doesn't really matter. He is high class. Then the next name that I'm surprised but also not surprised to see is Trevor Inyakane. Now, we have so many good props at the moment. Trevor is getting towards the older age, 35 at the moment. So I'm not sure if Trevor's going to be in the plans for the 2027 World Cup, but I think Rassie sees this series, especially against Ireland, that we have to beat them. We have to beat them confidently. We have to win the series 2-0 to really stamp our mark. There's this rivalry brewing between South Africa and Ireland, who's the best in the world. So I think that's kind of Rassie saying, let's bring in the experience, let's get the series under our belt, and then we can start experimenting a little bit later in the year in the Rugby Championship against Portugal and in those tests in November in the UK. We then move over into a couple of loose forwards. Evan Roos, who had a very, very good game against Wales. We weren't sure how he was going to cope again in a Springbok top. Well, he answered that question, and he answered it with flying colours. You could even argue that Evan Roos starts this game without Jasper Visser, who's still banned. You've obviously got Pepsi Buthelezi, who can start. Ben Jason Dixon. Kwagga Smith, who's next on the list, could also start at 8. I think Kwagga is a very, very good 8, but I do think Rassie might use him in that flank position. We just have so much depth. It's ridiculous. Then we move on. Archie Snyman, who had a very good season for Munster. He did get a little bit injured, and we know how good Archie Snyman is coming off the bench, providing that impact into that pack for the bomb squad off of the bench. The offloads, he's a tall, big, rangy runner. He's great in the lineouts. So Archie Snyman could also fight for that lock position. Again, so much depth. It's going to be very, very interesting to see who Rassie selects for this Ireland series. Moving on, we got Gerrit Steenkamp, who plays for the Bulls and has been called up. We have so many props. I'm just not too sure where he's going to fit in. But again, Rassie Erasmus could experiment with him. He's only 27. He'll be prime prop age by the time the 2027 World Cup comes around. So it's someone to look at. Someone who is missing from the forwards that I'm just glancing at now is Volko Low, who has played for the Springboks before. He had a great season for the Bulls. He scrummed that Leinster pack at Loftus, absolutely silly. And if you think about it, putting Volko Low in the squad could have potentially been a good option because he's just scrummed against the Irish pack in the form of Leinster at Loftus, his home ground. It could have been a very, very good pick. So I think him missing out is slightly unfortunate, but again, we have so much depth. Marco van Staden, who's been injured for the Bulls for the past couple of weeks, but as we know, he's a quality loose forward and could definitely get the job done for South Africa. Again, whether he starts or not, there's still so much content coming this week where we're going to break down every single position and decide who we think should be starting for the Springboks against Ireland. Then the final two players that have been included on this list is Jan-Hendrik Wessels, plays for the Bulls. It's another hooker on the list for the Springboks to increase that depth. He's a very, very good, very young hooker, only 23 years of age. So young Hendrik Wessels could be the one for the future. Obviously, we still have Bongi Mbonambe, we have Malcolm Marx, we have Jan Hendrik Wessels. We have a couple of guys that can play that hooker position. I think it's going to be very difficult to make it into this team for Ireland, for Jan Hendrik Wessels, just because, like I said earlier, Rassie Erasmus wants to win this series against Ireland, and I don't think this is necessarily the time to be experimenting just that much. Then the final forward on the list is Jasper Visser. As we know, he's still banned for this test. They've obviously included him into the squad so that he can help out in training with the other loose forwards, with the other eighth man. And then it's also just a sign, Rassie saying that he will be included in the Springbok team going forward once his ban is completed. He is sort of the full package at number 8 for us at the moment. He's taking over the baton from Dwayne Vermeulen, and he's such a huge talent that we just can't not have him in the Springbok squad. So those are the forwards from the Springbok squad. We now move over into the backs, which get a little bit more interesting because there are a couple of players that haven't been included that potentially probably should have been included, a couple of surprise packages that have come in. So starting off, Lukhanyo now. Has been injured for sort of the back end of the Sharks season. We know how quality Lukhanyo is, especially on defense for the Springboks. He can break open a game. He's very tight at the back there, but I'm just not too sure if he's going to get game time against Ireland just because he hasn't played rugby in so long. It would surprise me to see Lukhanyo take Jesse Creel's place in that number 13 position. But again, what do I know? Dr. Rassie, that's why he has that job. Next up, we've got Kurtley Arendse, who did play in the final of the URC for the Blue Bulls. He had a cheek injury. He fractured or broke his cheekbone. They had to put a plate in, but he was ready then for the final. And if he is fit, I do see him starting at wing for the Springboks. Next up, we've got Damien de Allende, who surprisingly came off the bench against Wales. Damien de Allende, for me, is still our best number 12, especially in these big games against Ireland. You just know exactly what you're going to get from Damien de Allende when he steps on that pitch. He's so consistent. That's not me saying that Andre Esterhuizen had a bad game last week. I just think Damien de Allende is the Springbok number 12 at the moment. He's super consistent, gets go forward ball. His defense is good. So for me, he would probably be my starting number 12. Faf de Klerk obviously has been included. Fuffy brings that excitement, brings that X factor at ruck time. He is probably going to start against Ireland and he will be included. As you'll see, there are a couple more scrum offs coming up. Next up, we've got Andre Esterhuizen. Obviously, he needs to be included in the squad. He's our replacement number 12. He started against Wales. No problems there. Apelele Fassi had a phenomenal game against Wales. He was so good under the high ball. Yes, he did get a yellow card. A little bit unfortunate. You could see that as a yellow, you could see that as a penalty, or you could see that as a red. It just depends which side you're supporting on the day. But Apelele Fassi, we weren't sure if he was going to answer the call. He had a resurgence of a season for the Sharks, and he answered the questions. He can play 15 for the Springboks, and with Damian Willemse still out, yes, he obviously has Sasha Feinberg Ngumazulu breathing down his neck, who also had a phenomenal game, came on and slotted that penalty, was absolutely phenomenal for a youngster to come on with that amount of pressure. Yes, it is against Wales, but in his debut and perform like that, I mean, you saw Rassie and the coaching staff laughing after he kicked that penalty because of how good it was. So Sasha, it wouldn't surprise me to see him start against Ireland, whether it be at 15, whether it be at 10, whether it be at 12. I would probably put Sasha on the bench just because he provides that utility, 15, 12, 10 wing, and then you'll probably start someone like a Handré Pollard against Ireland. Moving down, Cheslin Kolbe has recovered from his injury, and I do think will be fit for this game against Ireland. So having Kurtley Arendse and Cheslin Kolbe back is absolutely huge news for the Springboks. But again, the wings that played last week, who we're going to get into, played phenomenally well. So Rassie Rasmus definitely has a little bit of a headache in that back three position. We then move on. Jesse Creel, Mr. Consistent at number 13. His defense is solid. He had another good game against Wales. And like I said, it's very difficult for me to see Lukhanyo taking that 13 jersey away from Jesse Creel. Willie Leroux is back in the mix, and I think Willie was that missing piece for the Bulls last week in the URC final. I think if the Bulls had Willie Leroux in that game with his kicking, his game management, his vision, I think they would have won that game. Willie is a key part of the Bulls team, and whether you like him or not, Willie is a key part of the Springbok side, and he's probably going to start at 15 with Damian Willemse out. And it's probably good. I mean, he's played himself into some very good form towards the back end of the season. He brings that experience. He brings that game management, that cool head. And with him and Handré Pollard controlling that kicking game and the game management, the Springboks can't go wrong. A lot of people last week were asking, where is Manie Libbok? Well, he has been included into the squad to face Ireland. Now, it's going to be very difficult to play himself into this team, I think, because you've got Handré Pollard, you've got Sasha Feinberg and Ngumazulu, who's now sort of stamped his mark on the international stage. Yes, again, it was for Wales. Yes, again, he came off the bench. But if you start in Handré Pollard against Ireland, then you're probably going to have Sasha Feinberg and Ngumazulu on the bench to cover 10, 12, 15. Then where does Manie Libbok fit in there? Again, Manie could start this game against Ireland. Just depends on the game plan that Rassie and them are going for. With Tony Brown now in the coaching staff for the Springboks, they could have something up their sleeve. They could start Manie and play a little bit more of an attacking game. Makazole Mapimpi had a phenomenal game last week. Like Rudy Page said in a video we shot a couple of weeks ago, Mapimpi just doesn't have a bad game for the Springboks, and he proved it again in that test against Wales. Handré Pollard, Mr. Consistent. Yes, he hasn't had a great season for the Leicester Tigers, but he is the Springbok fly at the moment. There's a reason he's won 2 World Cups. There's a reason he had a 100% kicking record at the 2023 Rugby World Cup. He just knows Springbok rugby, and it would surprise me if anyone else started ahead of him in this Ireland game. Kobus Reinach gets the call up to the squad again. Can play 9, can play wing. He has a little bit more utility. He provides us with a bit of a different game to that of Faf de Klerk. He can come off the bench. As we know, Rassie Erasmus played 4 scrum-offs in the same game in the Rugby World Cup. And he could potentially do it again because he's included Morne van den Berg and Grant Williams as well. So 4 scrum-offs in the squad to face Ireland. I don't know what he's going to do about that, but it does provide for interesting content. It provides a lot of discussion that you and I can have on this channel, on Instagram, in the comments. So again, lots of videos coming this week where we're going to discuss every single position and who we think should play. Then the final player on this list is Edwulf van der Merwe, who won man of the match against Wales. He really stepped up. His defense was great. His attack, he scored that phenomenal try. Providing headaches for Rassie Erasmus. Do you play Kurtley Arendse, Cheslin Colby, Edwulf van der Merwe, Makazole Mapimpi? There's just so many options that you can go with on wings. Apelele Fassi, Grant Williams. So the depth in this squad is absolutely crazy. Rassie Erasmus is going to have a massive headache trying to pick this team. That is the full squad, forwards and backs, but we have been provided with players on standby. So if anyone gets injured in training, if anything happens, these players can then fly in and take their spot. So for the forwards, let's just go through them quickly. Jean-Luc Depree, who's had a great season. Joseph Dweba, unfortunately, missed out on the squad. I think he had a decent season for the Stormers. It's good to see that he is still in the fray of things. Neertling Forshire, a little bit unlucky not to play against Wales, I thought, but good to see him on the standby list. Mpilo Gumede, again, an up-and-coming talent. Maybe he's going to be one of those players that we bowled with to the 2027 World Cup. He's still very, very young. He's a good ball carrier. He's great for the Bulls. Him and Cameron Honeycomb at the Bulls are lethal combinations. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go forward with those two. 2 more guys from the Bulls. I thought Ulrich Lowe, it's very, very harsh that he misses out on the squad for Ireland. He's had a phenomenal season. 6, 7, 8, can play lock. That is probably one of the biggest calls Rassie has made. Ulrich Lowe not being able to play for the Springboks against Ireland and be included in that squad. Wilco Lowe, we spoke about him a little bit earlier, had a great game against Leinster. Mchunu, I thought got a little bit unlucky last week, only to get 12 minutes. I thought he should have maybe got 30 minutes. He's obviously still in the fray, still a very, very good prop. Ruben van Heerden and Andre Hugo Venter finished that out from the Stormers. A little bit unlucky, but I don't think we expected them to make the squad. And then into the backs, the guys on standby, Suleiman Hartzenbach, plays wing for the Stormers, had a very good season for the Stormers. Again, it's just so difficult to make it in the Springbok squad as a wing. Jordan Hendrickse unfortunately misses out, and I think that he had a little bit of a baptism of fire last week against Wales. The stage just looked slightly too big for him at the moment. He still is a very, very good player. He's still super young. So he just needs to get some confidence and build into that Springbok number 10 position. Ethan Hooker also misses out. I wasn't expecting Ethan Hooker to make the squad, but it is good to see him on standby. And then the last 2, Kewan Horn, who I feel like potentially should have got a shot against Wales, but then Apelele Fassi played so well that he kind of played Kewan Horn out of the squad for Ireland. And then, unfortunately, the last one, Sio Masuku, who I thought probably should have started against Wales, wasn't meant to be. And I think that is a mistake that Rassie Erasmus did make last week against Wales, starting Jordan Hendrickse instead of Sio Masuku. I think Sia has a little bit more experience. He's a little bit more cool, calm, and collected. And I think if he had been given that chance against Wales, we could have seen Sia Masuku in the squad to face Ireland. So that is the squad that Rassie Erasmus and the Springboks have selected to face Ireland. Let me know what you guys think. There's going to be many, many videos coming out this week discussing each position. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about it. If you haven't, please make sure you absolutely mud that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.